Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. My name is David Talbot. I'm Managing Director and Head of Research here at Red Cloud Securities, and I'm delighted to host a Red Cloud webinar on uranium today. We are going to hear from GoviEx CEO Daniel Major. Now, during today's webinar, he will provide an overview and outlook, and then we will take as many questions as we can. Please type your questions into the chat box. And before we kick things off, first we need to discuss the fine print. During this GoviEx webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I direct listeners to the forward-looking statements outlined on page 2 of GoviEx's presentation. That can be found on the company's website, goviex.com. For Red Cloud Securities, I'd highlight this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. So please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures on GoviEx Uranium. Now with that, I turn it over to Daniel to update the audience on GoviEx. Daniel.
Thank you very much, David, and I appreciate you having us on again. Going to do something slightly different on our presentation today. We're going to focus a bit more on Matanga. Historically, we've been very much focused on Madaouela, but we thought we'd turn it around a bit. So yeah, our disclaimers and cautionary statements are there. Please, if you feel the need, they are on the presentation, which will be on the website today or tomorrow. But also, and you can be found there. I may make some forward-looking statements, so please look at that. So just a summary, we are a growth-focused, African-focused company. We are really looking at the development of our 2 mine-permitted projects. The Madaouela project in Niger, where we've started some initial site work. Going forward, just getting roads in and starting to get prepared. The Matanga project is moving forward steadily to complete its feasibility study by the second half of this year, and we will then be looking at financing that project and moving it into the construction phase. The uranium market continues to go from strength to strength. I think, as we've noted before, what is interesting is the increasing amount of positive news that's now on the nuclear demand side, increasing amount of government focus on building reactors globally, and more importantly, an focus now on the SMR development, and a lot of money being put towards that. So clearly now is the time to be getting projects into production. We continue to have a situation where we are not producing enough uranium to meet the demand that's out there, and new projects are going to be needed as older projects come to the end of their lives. Yet Africa remains an advantage in the majority. We have a very large resource, and we've got a lot of exploration potential on the resources that we already have. So if we go to Matanga, this is a great asset. It is fully mine permitted, and it does not take very long to move through the steps of the various permitting stages, like the ESIA, etc. It is really well positioned. It's about 200 kilometers south of Lusaka, just north of Lake Kariba, in the southern part of Zambia. Good infrastructure. We've got tarmac roads all the way. We're very close to Lake Kariba. It's about 30 kilometers as the crow flies to the power station there. Zambia is about 80% hydro. There's a lot of exploration within our property, and particularly on the Kariba Valley exploration license that we have to the south. As I said, well on track to complete our feasibility study and ESIA with a target of moving into production. From a geological setting, there's nothing new about our geology. It covers a massive belt of potential uranium. This is this Karoo superbelt, was formed once Gondwana came through and came crashing through, strip away and crash together. You get a number of sections through. It goes all the way through from Tanzania, where you've got Makuja, through Malawi, where you've got Kailakeria, past ourselves, and then down to projects like ACAP Lethkani, down to South Africa and the South African uranium deposits down there. It's a massive uranium-bearing structure. We're particularly focused into the escarpment grits, That's pretty important because we're staying away from the more carbonaceous material that you find in many of the other deposits, which impact your acid consumption considerably. So we're within the total Karoo. You can see where Matanga sits there, right within those escarpment grits. If you come down into those Mombasa sand zones, into the coal structures that you're seeing in places like Malawi, in Botswana, they have a lot more carbonaceous material. As you see, there are quite a few projects along this whole pipeline. From a point of view, we have the 3 mining permits. We've got 5 deposits scattered across those. The major ones are sitting within the 2 Matanga projects in the middle, particularly the Matanga and the Dibwe East deposits. They've all gone to pre-feasibility study previously. We did put a PEA out in 2017 once we had consolidated. And as you can see, we've got considerable amount of exploration property around the licenses, and even within the licenses, there are areas that have yet to be explored. We updated our mineral resource in the middle of last year after considerable amount of drilling completed in 2021 and 2022. The focus of that was on the Dibwe East deposit, and we were focused on trying to convert our inferred resources up into indicated, and we did that. We had a substantial increase, going from 29% of our total resources to 74%. Total resources grew as well, and what you see is that and importantly, about 81% of the total resource is focused on the 2 main deposits of Matanga and Dibwe East, which makes designing the property a lot easier. We carried on with drilling in 2024. We did another substantial, and that was because the resource grew so much in 2023, particularly within Dibwe East, and we actually gained a lot more inferred resource. So there's about another 7-8 million pounds of resources there that needed converting over. We did that. We planned in the drilling, and we put this in a press release before. So the 2 sections on the top show what it was like in the resource. And you can see where the gaps were that we were trying to fill, the blue being the inferred categories, and the red ones below, because I can't give you the new categorization because the new resource isn't out yet. But you can see very clearly that holes that were put down did go straight through and extended where those inferred resources were, making the conversion across to indicated highly likely. On an exploration side, as commented, we've still got a lot more. The slide up on the top left side actually shows the Matanga and Dibwe East, shows the potential pit shapes and where the heap leaches and everything will go. But what I'd like to point out here particularly is those areas outside, particularly up on the northeast side. Those anomalies have known uranium occurrences. They were drilled by people before us, but they never extended out the drilling beyond the couple of holes that actually found the anomaly. So there's way more potential even close. The second slide at the bottom shows our Kariba Valley license, and all of the gray areas are known uranium anomalies. In some of them, we've got drill holes, which indicate there's a lot more potential there for drilling. That's relatively close as well to the whole Matanga project, and could act as another satellite deposit going forward. We've done a lot, as I said, most of these projects have been through a PFS before. While I can't actually give the results from our PEA, because you're only allowed to have 1 technical study out at any one time according to the exchange rules, we do have the metallurgical results in that technical report on the MRE. So what is really good about this project as well is that the mineralogy is very simple. Most of the material is a straight autunite. It's a uranium calcium phosphate. More importantly, it's very exposed. You've got highly liberated, means liberation here being, can you see the minerals? Are they not entrapped or free? So 90% of the minerals here are fully liberated. Makes it easy to access. We don't have to go to very coarse crushing or anything like that, which it really lends itself to the process choice here, which is to go to heap leach. And you can see from the table at the bottom, for a heap leach operation, these are very high recoveries and with very low acid consumption consumption because we have very little overall calcium in the license as well. So heap leaching, very much the choice for ourselves here. We importantly, because the rock is very soft and friable, we will just go through a roller crusher, a mineral sizer. It's very low capital, it's very low operating cost because of low energy. We only need to reduce our rock down to about 1 inch in size, 25 millimeters, so nice coarse rock size. We will just agglomerate using sulfuric acid. Sulfuric acid is easily accessible in Zambia. It's a net exporter of sulfuric acid. They produce it from smelting of copper in the country and up in the DRC. So we just stack it all up. We'll drip over these low acid consumptions. And then through that, we'll move into a standard ion exchange process, pretty well what you would see in an ISR project in North America or anywhere else. So that's what all of the projects look like. The difference is that the smaller deposits will finish there. They will then truck the resin beads through to the centralized plant that we will have. And that centralized plant is where 81% of the resource is. It's the much bigger heap leach. And that we will then elute. We will then strip off the uranium from those resin beads and take that through to precipitation and roasting to get U3O8, which will then truck out probably through Walvis Bay, and because that's where Kyla Carrier went. And there's obviously a lot of uranium gets shipped out of Namibia already. So it's a very easy access point, well understood. From an FS point of view, we've done a lot of work in the last year. Water supply, we've done a lot of work on ensuring that we've got water bore holes in, done pump testing, very positive indications for water supply on this project. In fact, we may have too much of it. On our metallurgy, the ongoing verification test work we've got going on in Mintec to date, results have been in line with the previous work. We've done a lot of work on the heap leach design to ensure that it meets compliance for international standards. It's fairly substantial. I mean, the heap leach at the moment for the main deposit is going to be 1 kilometer wide in total by 1.5 kilometers. So it's a very large piece of ground. Electricity design, we've been working intensively with ZESCO regarding grid supply. Another benefit here of Zambia is 80% of the energy is hydro. But we are looking at backup as well with solar and diesel included. Zambia at the moment is struggling with a drought, and they have reduced the amount of power to mine. So we have to take that into account and ensure we've covered it off. Mining is relatively straightforward here, and the mine design work is very much underway. We're scheduling expected to be completed by the end of this month. The ASAI baseline has been going on for 2 years. We've had no red flags up under that. We are following IFC standards. We do have to move a number of communities. We've got about 2,000 people in 500 homes. There is a very standardized process in Zambia of doing this. And we have consultants at AMC who are handling that process for us. We engage intensely with our communities as a result of that and make sure that everybody is comfortable with the process going forward. So, as I said, completion of that FS expected in the second half. And we're also doing, because of that, a lot of work with our workforce and getting it trained to ensure that, you know, when we are ready to go into construction, we have a local workforce that's able to benefit from the jobs that will be created by this mine when it gets up and going. On the community side, in this particular area, we do a lot. We have 100% local Zambian approach as well. All our employees in Zambia are Zambia. We've done a lot on the various communities with regarding schools, power, water. We sponsor food crops as well. We started a large adult education program, as I mentioned before, just to get our adults. We discovered that 70% of our adults had no English education. They only had a local dialect. We do a lot of work on health as well, as I said, with investments into clinics, and continue to really deal with this. You have to get a social license, and that we take that very seriously and responsible. I'm now just go back to where we are, which has always been in the past one of our key projects, being Madaouela. This is a great project. We've advanced it a long way. We finished the feasibility study off in 2022. In the middle of last year, we had actually secured our LOIs for the debt financing. And as you will know, obviously there was a change in government through a military coup. At the moment, we are continuing to work closely with government. They own 20% of the project, and we're starting to do initial work on the ground to keep in favor with them. At the same time, continuing to work with potential lenders on this one. And at the same time, are looking at alternative financing options going forward. So this project has a very robust, at these metal prices, net present value, and at the current molybdenum prices going forward. But as I say, the key at the moment is to secure that financing to really develop that project. And obviously that process being somewhat delayed by the change in politics that's been associated in Niger. On the market, we've obviously, as I said at the beginning, seen a substantial improvement, particularly on the demand side that's out there. And I think that's really been the change since COP28 was going through. I think the other thing we're seeing as well is an increasing understanding from the utilities that getting projects up and running is no easy feat, and that there are risks out there in many forms, including Kazakhstan with its acid supply issues, delays in getting Cameco's projects, are issues in Niger as well, and with Global Atomic. So things don't always come out to plan, but we are also seeing projects come towards the end of their lives. So new projects are needed to go forward. We do have a very experienced board. Govin Friedland, obviously Robert Friedland's son, he's the founder of the company. Benoit Lassalle was the founder of Semifo, now does Aya Silver and other companies. Salma was a member of the SocGen team that did the debt financing for Paladin. And so we have a very robust board here. We raised money at the end of last year. We got in enough that what we felt we needed for at least this year. So we're well on track with that at the moment. And in a good position with insiders continuing to hold a substantial share in this project. The uranium market has gone up a lot. Again, we continue to see the uranium equities just really not pricing that in yet. And we certainly feel that that's still to happen out there. And GoviEx continues to trade. I mean, I appreciate it at the moment with the risks that have been out there. There is that discount associated with what goes on with Niger. But at the end of the day, we are more than underpinned by that Matanga project. Even if you look at it in dollars per pound, you look at the net present values that were there in the PEA, which you can access on CDAR Plus. GoviEx is a two-project company. We're not a single project company, and there is that value to be there. So uranium market better. We certainly have the team to get these things built. We are permitted. And at the moment, it's about finishing off the technical studies at Matanga, but also working on the financing options for both of those projects to get them up and running. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you very much, Daniel. Great presentation as always. So we'd like to kick off the Q&A portion of the webinar right now. Reminder to everyone online, you can type your questions into the chat box at any time. Already have a few questions here, Daniel. Uranium prices, let's start there, seem to have found a new floor here at about the $88 a pound range US. What are your thoughts about the recent stabilization of uranium price?
I think it was very important to get that stabilization. I mean, the spot market had been running very strongly, but it was running on very thin volumes. So there was always a risk that we had a pullback. And I think to see it settle at this sort of high 80s level is important. We're also seeing that term contracts come up to $80 as well, which is an important factor, because that's setting that benchmark and closing the gap there. I still think there's more room back up towards the upside, but for those of us who've been in this industry long enough, I'm very happy to see us up in the 80s to the 90s, and certainly to see contracts up at the $80 number. I think we still have to see supply shocks come through, and I think that will continue supporting the market going forward.
Okay. And Matanga, this project used to be a couple years behind the development at Madaouela, but between Niger uncertainty and much higher uranium prices, has your focus changed? Has priority of that asset changed at all here?
No, I don't think I mean, yes, we have to talk about it more, because I don't think people were recognizing it was there at all. Everybody was focused on our Nigerian project from that point of view. From us, we've carried on. It's catching up simply because Niger has been forced to slow down, and Matanga has carried on in the background. And why would we not keep it moving as fast as possible, particularly as the uranium market is in such a robust position for it to come onto stream as well.
Right. Okay. And what sort of support are you getting from the Zambian government and local communities?
Excellent. I mean, we engage a lot with the government all of the time. They often come down to site to review. We engage with them obviously as well, because we're going through the permitting stage. With the community, we've engaged ever since, even with Denison before, who owned us, on the community side. They are very keen to see this project built. They're very keen to get the jobs there. We have to educate, obviously. Not everybody wants to have a uranium mine on their back door. So there's a lot of that conversation and explaining how it will work. And as I said, we're making those commitments to our community as well to employ them. And not just because they're already educated and all those things. We're having to go back and get them to the level that they can take those jobs, and that takes an effort from our side. So yeah, very positive.
Yeah, and you did say 100% Zambian workforce. So can you find that much experience locally, or do you really have to invest in their training and their education?
Most of the training and education is focused on the lower level, so operators, truck drivers, etc. Going forward, those kind of things. When we want highly skilled people, then obviously we can access into the Northern Copper Belt, the mining industry that's there. I mean, the great thing about being in Zambia is there is such a lot of skill sets going forward.
Mm-hmm. And Matanga as well, it's rather a simple geological setting, and many projects along trend, including some that are moving towards production. Does this geological setting make this project a little bit easier to mine and develop? And what does it say for further upside?
Oh, it's very much what's driving it. I mean, if you look at it from a cost point of view and everything, it's very soft rock. We don't need to mill it. We just crush it. Power is cheap at about 8 cents a kilowatt hour. We're on low acid consumption as well, because there's very little clay in the rock. So these are all benefits to the process side of operating it. It's relatively easy to mine, so it won't need a lot of explosives either. So again, keeps your mining costs down. So these are all positive things, and things we're sort of working on to see how we can benefit from it. And again, looking out on the exploration opportunity. So, I mean, given the bigger resource, this project's probably going to be longer than it was originally forecast. But at the same time, we're already out trying to say, well, where's the next bit that we can add on to it at the same time?
Okay. And, you mentioned about exchange rules, make it so that you can't quote your PEA, because you've expanded your resource since then and updated your mineral resource estimate. But your testing and ideas from the PEA hold true, correct? We're looking at low acid consumption, high recoveries, and there's really no real changes to how you plan to develop this still, right? It's crush, heap leach before ion exchange.
Absolutely. I mean, I think in the PEA, I think we assumed we were going to do a bit of milling on it. So we've changed from that, gone straight back to crushing, and found that we just go, not even crushing, just mineral sizing, which is even easier. Things just fall straight through if it's the right size. So no, I mean, everything so far that we've looked at, is very much showing that the PEA was correct. But it should be. It was based on previous PFS data, so it shouldn't be radically different.
Yeah, so mineral sizing is essentially a function, again, of the deposit. The fact that it's a very soft rock, you can just break it up. You don't even have to grind or mill it. So, okay. Now,
Correct.
you are suggesting heap leach. How common is heap leach processing for uranium deposits, and what makes Matanga really suitable for this heap leach process?
There are some good things, good heap leachers and some bad heap leachers. Somaïr does it all of the time up in Niger. They run a standard plant, but they also run a heap leaching operation and have for many years very successfully. Oramin had one at Trekopi that wasn't so successful because it turned into a brick, so nothing actually went through it. So at the end of the day, heap leaching requires, a very permeable rock that you can get material solutions through, that you've got easily liberated minerals that will come out very quickly in a process. And that's exactly what you use. It in gold a lot, use it in copper a lot. I mean, it might not be common in uranium because there are other ways of doing it. I like to describe it more as an upside down ISR mine. We just happen to take it out of the ground and put it on a heap before pouring solutions over it. And that's more because of the function of where our water is and how we entrap the solution. We can't use ISR everywhere because we would impact the groundwater. So better just put it up on a heap and then pour the solutions over it.
Yeah. Okay, great. Now you are starting to do some work on the ground, as you mentioned. Is this all infrastructure work, and what can you do right now, and how much capital might that require?
You're talking about Madaouela?
No, sorry, we're back. I believe we're talking about Matanga. So.
Matanga, I'm not doing any construction work there at the moment. The first thing we'll have to do there is building the road up. The escarpment to get to it, but that won't start until we won't put any major capital until we've got the FS out of the way, because we'll know exactly what we want to do. We'll have the design engineering for it, etc., so we can go on ahead and do it. But at Madaouela, we've started putting in the road system that needs to go in. We'll be starting clearing land soon and start looking towards the feed engineering side, which we've already got SGS doing. And should be looking at some of the civil engineering that goes in as well. So, there are a number of aspects that we can do which are relatively low cost at the moment while we work out how to finance the project.
And these are things that have to be done anyways, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you've got to clear. Absolutely. Leveling it. These are all very much parts of the process. So we're not doing things that, are pointless.
Yeah. Okay. Now, Matanga, how quickly do you believe you can update your economic studies? And are you going straight to feasibility study rather than updating the PEA or even a PFS?
Straight to FS. There's no reason to just write an PFS just for the sake of it. Most of it was already designed. As I said, most of the metallurgical test work is verification test work anyway. It's just down to then the level of quotes. So everything we're doing is, it is more of a challenge by cutting straight through, but, it also cuts down the time. If you go to PFS, you still then got to go and repeat a lot of the work again to turn it into an FS. So you might as well just do it once.
And do you have an expected timeline for getting Matanga up and running?
Well, 2 years after we get the financing is basically what I would say. But I'm still waiting for the final, Gantt chart that tells me how quickly I can get this thing to built. And it'll be down to how quickly the plant can get built, because the mining is actually very straightforward. You're right in from surface.
Okay. And we're still talking about Matanga, right?
Yes.
Okay. Is it too early for you to start looking at offtakes, as perhaps a means of financing or maybe supporting debt financing? Has this interest from nuclear utilities picked up over the last 6 or 8 months? I know you guys have a larger resource base than most uranium companies out there. I imagine that would be very attractive for power plants looking for long-term stable deliveries.
Absolutely right. I mean, we were very aggressive last year at doing this. We obviously paused with Madaouela into the market until we knew where Niger was going to settle out. But this year, my head of uranium sales, Chris Lewis, is back out in the market again. Where there was an RFP recently we bid in. We're still waiting for the response on that. There haven't been very many RFPs, to be honest. But we are now starting to push back onto the utilities to try and find contracts. The one nice thing for us as well is we can position it for both sides. So deliver from Zambia or Madaouela, whichever project is up and running.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And the Niger government, so maybe sending some mixed messages here over the last few months, seem to have put competent civilians in various government positions. Seems pro-business, business as usual. But even recently have told the Americans they wanted the military out. Do you have any update on the situation in country?
I think you've described it quite nicely there. I mean, yes, it is still uncertain to know a clear position. I mean, they clearly want the mines to get up and running. There is a lot of support to get development going in the country, but it is made more difficult for somebody like us, where we were sitting with Western-backed financing to look at it. So we sat down and said, well, we just got to go and look elsewhere, look at alternatives, while continuing to pursue what we already have. And the lenders that sent us LOIs have not walked away at this stage. So we are still sitting there with potential lending. We've moved forward on some of the due diligence, particularly the environmental, because that's the first one you have to get out of the way. But at the same time, we've got to come up with a plan B or a plan C, and even if you go abroad, some of these have other political machinations. So if you go to China, for example, to get all your financing out of there, or equity partnership, you can no longer deal with the Western market because they are sanctioned. Most of those Chinese companies are as well. So that causes you some problems. You can go to Russia, then you have another problem. Japan is at the moment not really a buyer for uranium in the open market, simply because they have a lot of inventory already. So, it's not obvious. The Saudi states are another place that we are obviously looking at. The Friedlands have quite a lot of relationships into that area. So, that's another part of the world that we go to and engage with and see how best to get these financing. So, even when you look at your access to capital, global politics gets involved as well.
Okay, great. Question from a shareholder here. You've been CEO since 2012, yet to produce any uranium, obviously. Share count is up, cash is low. Are you still the right man for the job to keep moving these things forward?
My first comment to that is the shareholders keep voting me in. So I assume that at the moment people are happy with it. Yes, I came in 2012. We were an exploration company back then. The uranium market then crashed all the way down to $16 a pound. I have re-engineered that company. I've got these things through ready to. Madaouela, if we hadn't had the coup, we'd be working on debt financing to get this project forward. We picked up Zambia later. I've now got that one through to where it needs to go. If you looked at I think this is a stat city, if you looked at UxC's Q1 report last year, GoviEx of the developers raises less money than any other company, and we've been doing it for 3 projects. So yeah, there is a share count, and at the end of the day, I do a lot of work on marketing for us, but we use money very carefully, and the money that we do have, and again, getting another project through to feasibility study is quite a feat, and to do it without using a lot of money is I think it's great. Kudos to my team and their ability to multifunction. Sorry, just to move on to that, and finding funds, we look at all sorts of options, and it's your access to capital that's out there at any time, and you're always looking for alternatives. Alternatives aren't always cheaper as well. I mean, I get often asked questions about forward sales on uranium. None of the utilities are doing forward sales on uranium anymore. Paladin just killed that market for everybody when they did it with EDF. So there's that's definitely a question, but EDF's experience has pretty well stopped that one.
Yeah, okay. And these projects, they do take time to develop. Your projects are already permitted. I think they're developed in the same time frame as some of the big projects in the Athabasca Basin, like Vision and NextGen, that still are awaiting their permits.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I mean, our biggest problem is actually we had to wait out the uranium bear market, and that took a long time. And we cut things. I cut my salary substantially during that period as well, and to make sure the company had funding. And we worked with a very small team to keep going. And we're still here, and we've advanced our projects a long way in that process. While others sat down and did nothing, we kept moving our projects forward so that when the market did turn, like now, our projects would be ready to be built, whereas many have just sat down and did nothing.
Yeah, and in the meantime, at Madaouela, and we sort of touched on this regarding the infrastructure, but are you doing any work in the background there, still trying to optimize that project until you see more in-country stability, if you will?
Sorry, which one? In
Madaouela.
Madaouela. Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. I heard Matanga, and I was like, what? Yeah, I mean, look, yes, I do. I mean, I'm always looking at how we can optimize things going forward. There's always ways. With the feasibility study that somebody's built in probably some aggression on the design side. We are going back through that process, but I also need to have clarity that I need to push very hard as well. So there is that awkward period at the moment. I'm hopeful with Niger that it resolves itself, and while the Americans and the Nigerians continue to talk, and I think that's the key message out there, they are continuing to talk. The Nigerian government has asked them to remove their military, but the Americans have been pretty stubborn and not really moving, and I think they're still trying to find that place. And as I said, the lenders are very much political as well, and are very much engaging with us still as we kind of wait for a resolution.
Yeah, and without putting words into your mouth, because you have to work in Niger, I think those demands in the U.S. military are probably a little bit of posturing. More likely not to happen. They just want more support from the U.S.
You never quite know whose strategy is playing out, but you're absolutely right where this is coming. I'm actually going down to Niger at the end of the month, go and sit down with the minister and work out what they're trying to achieve.
Okay, great. And then I guess finally, you said you were a two-project company. I'd argue you might even be a project company. Is Falea in your plans at all? This is a polymetallic uranium gold project. Lots of upside. Is that something for your pipeline?
No, Falea we've kind of parked at the moment, to be terribly honest. I mean, Mali is politically way more complex than Niger, and there is a lot of issues there on permitting and the like going through. The government decided to set a moratorium on permitting, and they still haven't released it. So we're sitting with a permit renewal application required for Falea. It's been sitting there now for 7 months. We can't file it because there's no way to file any applications at the moment. So frustration. So I really, can't plan for anything there substantial at the moment until, we get clarity of where the politics is.
Okay. I did say last question, but I've got another one here. Is it really a matter of time and familiarization with investors before a confidence returns to Niger? Are there any specific catalysts that we should be looking for?
Yeah, I think with Niger, I mean, are a bit for, I think the clear catalyst will be when we can show that we can, ourselves and Global Atomic, that we can get that access to capital and get moving forward again. I mean, look, at the end of the day, the government, we've been through, this is not our first coup in Niger. We had one back in 2010 and we just carried on through it. So there have been 5 coups in Niger and it's just carried on. Arano operated through all of those. This is the only one where we've seen a stoppage going through. At the end of the day, the government needs funds. And the mines produce a lot of money going forward. So there is a lot of drive to get projects up and running and pressure to do so. I think sentiment will come back, but obviously it's taken a real dent. I mean, why wouldn't it? But I think for us, I mean, the important thing for me and, why the presentation was different from my normal one, we're not just about Niger. We have Matanga. And if Niger has to take some time, we'll just keep moving forward on Matanga as well and still build that. And if you look at it from, valuation basis, we're well covered on our share price just by Matanga. I looked at it dollars per pound versus, the pounds in what we've got compared to, the Namibian peers. You end up with a market cap that's higher than on that basis. So, we are very well undervalued there because, you're getting Matanga already, but people keep looking at Niger. I'm like, well, what about the other one? Give me some value for the other big project they've got.
Okay, and I guess just to clarify, the coup didn't stop the production directly in Niger. It's just the borders closed and necessary materials couldn't get through as the mines ran out of reagents. So, and drill rods.
Yeah, and the borders were closed by ECOWAS, not by the junta. Yeah. So the West African states closed the borders. I mean, Somalia is now operating again. I mean, it's got a lot of stockpiles. It doesn't do much mining, but it is now processing ore again and looking to get that material out. So, things have restarted there as well.
Okay, great. Well, Daniel from GoviEx Uranium, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you everybody else for tuning in. Red Cloud Securities will be back next Tuesday afternoon when Alina sits down with Graphite Explorer e-Power Resources. So that's April 16th at 2 p.m. Eastern. Have a great day, everyone, and thank you for supporting Red Cloud's webinar series.